Okay, thank you, Rachel. So I will, first, why don't we start with the takeaways, what we hope that you learned from today's session. So the first thing really is that the old ways of segmenting customers no longer works in today's environment where customers' expectations are an all-time high. And interestingly enough, in our B2C world, companies like Amazon and Netflix has really set the bar, and that's bled into the B2B world. And so our customer expectations, our own expectations of what a vendor or a company is going to provide to us are really high right now. Advanced customer segmentation is what we're going to be talking about today. And it's really foundational for your customer success org success. And we'll explain why. A proper advanced customer segmentation is a driver of a couple things, a couple big things: efficiency gain, scalability, improve customer experience, and ultimately customer growth, which is an outcome that we're all after. And then the one thing that you may not think is either important or is a bit disconnected from segmentation is really your staffing model. And that may or may not be something that you've thought about. It certainly wasn't something I thought about when I joined Mitek. And over the last 5 years, I've realized how important a staffing model signed off by executives is in growing your customer success team, and allowing your team to have the resources that are required in order to reach your customers' desired outcomes. But this really all starts with customer segmentation. And if you're wondering how those are connected, we will explain that to you today. All right, before we dive in, just a little background and context. This is not an advertisement. This is more of a perspective of where Rachel and I are coming from. So a little bit about Mitek. We're a publicly traded company headquartered in San Diego, where Rachel and I live. We have two main business units. The first you probably heard about, mobile check deposit. So if you've ever deposited a check with your phone, you've used Mitek. And the second business unit is identity verification. And we'll get into what that exactly means, but you can imagine in a digital world where, since the pandemic, especially, it's accelerated how many transactions we're doing online. And in order to have security and safe and optimal transactions, you need to have a verified identity, and that's where we come into play. Okay, next slide. I won't cover the other stuff. Just to get into identity verification real quick. Right here is the life cycle of an end user. So imagine you are either a guest or a host at Airbnb, and you want to either rent out your place or stay at an Airbnb. The first thing Airbnb will require you to do is verify your identity, right? So that's where the relationship begins, and that's where Mitek plays in, or plays rather. So we play mainly in the use case of onboarding. And so we'll verify the identity using the government issued driver's license and also a selfie. So we'll verify that that driver's license is legit, and we'll help Airbnb capture a selfie of the individual and compare the selfie with the picture in the driver's license. And that's when that identity is verified and you're allowed to transact on Airbnb. Throughout your life cycle, you'll have authentication moments where maybe you do something that's a little risky or scored as risky, and so a flag will go up, and then you'll have to authenticate or verify your identity again with Airbnb. So very simple. The next slide will show you how it gets a little complex with the components and how we work with customers. So you'll see the extent of all the components that make up Mobile Verify, which is the name of our identity verification product. Document capture. So capturing the document is an SDK that we offer to our customers. Capture the document, capture the selfie, verify the identity by checking the driver's license or the government issued document, checking the selfie, making sure that's a live person, making sure that document is live and not a screenshot, comparing the two, and then you're off and running. So from beginning to end takes about 7 seconds. So it's really fast, but you can see the different components that make up the whole verification process and how we work with customers. So hopefully that's enough context for our talk today and background. And I think that might be my finish. Yeah, I'm finished there. Okay, over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Mike. On just to piggyback off of what Mike was sharing about Mitek and our interactions with customers, we thought it would be appropriate to share with everyone today what our customer success charter is. I will be honest, prior to Mitek, I'm not really sure I took much stock or thought about a customer success charter, never really found its importance until we really started stitching together what we wanted to accomplish, how we wanted to measure our CSMs, and so forth. And so I will say today to everyone here that having a charter is important. And before you do make any changes or adjustments to your customer success org, we highly recommend that you create this charter, because it's going to be kind of your North Star to refer back to. And it's a good reminder of how CSMs are measured. And it's also a good reminder of what their roles and responsibilities are. We often, I think all of us being in CS, or at least probably most of the people on the phone have touched CS, oftentimes the CSMs can take on a lot, and we can take on maybe too much or try and fill gaps. And so if we have this customer success charter, it's going to kind of remind us of what actually CSMs are responsible and measured on. So I'll walk you through this real quick. The Mitek Global Customer Success Org partners with customers to achieve their business outcomes through optimal use of Mitek's products. Probably a very blanket statement for most people on this phone or on the phone who work with any customers. We want them to adopt our products and get the best out of what they're using. But furthermore, we want to drive the adoption. We want to improve and iterate off of our NPS that we receive with customers. We want to help our customers achieve their desired outcomes. We really we strive to drive long-lasting and growth-oriented relationships. And I really do see us doing this at Mitek, where we evangelize internally and tell the customer story. We really try to create the customer perspective within Mitek so that all teams at our company can truly understand what it's like to be in our customers' shoes. And as a result, we have seen revenue retention and growth, and we're going to continue to strive to do that. And so go ahead.
Yeah, I would cut you off just like in regular meetings. You'll cut me off.
No, please.
So it's all good. So I just wanted to just kind of explain to everyone that that last sentence I discussed with our CEO, with our management team, and we fought over it. You know, is customer success responsible for growing the revenue, or are we responsible for creating a scenario where revenue can grow, right? Those are two very different things. Couple words matter. And, you know, where we landed is super exciting. And, you know, that's where I believe that customer success needs to be at Mitek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, just to add to that, Mike, one thing that I think you and I talked about as this was kind of rolling out is we can control a lot, but oftentimes we can't always control the outcome of our customers. We can really try to create the right environment. And I think that's what we've been focusing on as CSMs, is what type of experience are our customers looking for? What kind of environment? We want to produce a place where our customers treat us like partners, so that we can increase that likelihood of their desired outcomes, and then also fulfill our own desired outcomes as a business. So yeah, that's our charter. And as we kind of talk through that charter, right, we've been successful in a sense of being able to retain that revenue and also grow. And we're coming into a new year. We've grown as a business, which is awesome. But there are new challenges that come up. And so that's where we're going next, is what are our problems for 2022 and 2021. We even had this come up as well, is what is it that we're going to try and do as a business? And I think, just to give some context, Mike was talking about being a mobile deposit company as far as checks, and that side of our business was, you know, it's our profit center, right? And so when we spun up this identity sector, it was a very small piece of our business, and so we've been able to grow it successfully, which is great. And now we're being kind of tasked with, how do we create more efficiency within this business, and how do we scale our customer success org and drive customer growth while improving the customer experience. And so this is where it can get a little conflicting, right? Because we're trying to find efficiency gains. And so oftentimes that means, okay, how can we maybe cut some things out, reassess how we're managing things, but also continue to drive customer growth and improve that customer experience. And so that is our problem statement. And one thing I will say before I go into our solution that we've landed on is this problem statement is super helpful before you start planning any new year or any kind of 5-year plan. Is you really need to find out and really study what is our problem, what are we trying to solve for before you start solutioning. It's sounds pretty basic, but it's definitely a key point here. So where we landed is customer segmentation. And the way that how we landed here was we knew that, as I was mentioning before, the identity space being new to kind of the Mitek mobile deposit check industry, we started out with, a handful of customers. And at the end of the day, we knew that we needed to probably revisit our business objectives and figure out how to be more effective as CSMs, how to be more efficient, how to retain, how to grow. And we knew that we probably needed to take a look at our engagements with our customers, because we were treating all of our customers the same. 20 has now grown into 300 customers. We can't be servicing our customers the same. And at that time, we were spending up hours of work for reporting, for QBRs, even EBRs. We were treating our small customers like extra larges. And at the end of the day, we were realizing that oftentimes the reaction or the engagement we were expecting from customers, we didn't get that same return or that ROI that we were expecting. And so as part of continuing to figure out how we should segment our customers, we also identified through the last 3 to 5 years in working with new customers and continuing to grow our existing ones, is everyone has a different use case. We've identified that a lot of customers have different things that are important to them. Some of our customers are very data driven. Some of our customers want to meet with executives monthly. Some of our customers just want us to leave them alone. And so that's where we were like, okay, we need to actually figure out how we want to segment our customers and do it properly. And so before we get into segmenting, I want to, and Mike, feel free to chime in here too, because I think you started this long before I did, but 3 questions you have to ask before you start segmenting your internal org is, how are your CSMs measured? How is CS measured? Are you in line with your SLT members? What metrics matter to them? I think making sure that you're on the same page with your executive team around how CS is getting measured is going to be a huge, maybe not a huge hurdle, but a huge thing once you can identify and be on the same page. And how mature is your product? I think we can all probably ask that question and have done so, but that's an important question to ask. And then what is your CSM engagement model? Do you have a CSM engagement model? So starting with some of those questions, I think are a good place to start before you actually dive into how you want to segment your customers.
Yeah, I would add that this is starting to build the justification for your segmentation model and your engagement model, right? So you're going to be asked questions about your segmentation. How'd you land there? Why did you do it this way? Because you're going to be partnering with other groups as well. A CSM alone does not support a customer, right? And so you will have some comments on your segmentation, and you need to be able to defend it and justify it. And this is really the first step in building your case for why you're segmenting it the way you are.
And so now we kind of get to the how. How did we actually figure out what type of segmentation we wanted? What were the steps? And so we're going to walk you through. There's 4 different steps here. And I think the first one is understanding your customer's appropriate experience. And I like to kind of refer to this as data collection. Like I said, the last 3 to 5 years in the identity space, we've been really trying to understand what our customers' experiences look like. We take a look at everything from NPS I mean, down to the nitty gritty of did this same person respond? Did they actually give a higher score or a lower score? Did they actually respond with anything? And kind of taking a look at that historical look back is really helpful to kind of understand what your customer's experience is, how it's changed, and so forth. And then another huge one for us is, when does a customer actually become successful in production? Did our customers have implementation snags? Did an escalation with a customer that went from red to green, did that actually improve their customer experience and keep them as a lifelong partner with us at Mitek? These are all things that we've been measuring, including even a customer coming to us for onboarding, like Mike was walking us through earlier, where they use us for a very basic use case. Maybe we've advanced and created new use cases, and there's data around that. We've been really studying, trying to understand, how did this happen and what was the experience like for that customer? And of course, we would naturally want to focus on the customers that are successful and that are growing. And so we took a microscope, and we're still continuing to do it. It's like an ongoing thing where we take a look at those customers and try to understand what worked for them. Was there something different? And so then once you've collected your data, and again, this will be an ongoing thing, I think you can move in kind of to the segmentation phase, where we took a look at anything from lifetime value. So over the course of 3 to 5 years, what does that trajectory look like for the customer? Are they going to continue to be a medium size based on a lot of different things? Maybe their logo is big, but their revenue is small, but we know that they're going to grow into an extra large account. We took a look at the verticals. Is this a marketplace customer? Is this a big banking customer? Use cases, life cycle, where they're at in the life cycle, how would we split them out? Looking back at some of the data that we saw and collected, we actually split out our onboarding program. We actually created an onboarding program for our customers, because the data showed us that early on during a implementation phase for a customer, customers are very needy and they need extra high touch, extra high attention. And it's really an opportunity for us to start building that relationship and giving them kind of that white glove experience. And so creating that customer onboarding phase allowed us to segment our customers, but also give them the opportunity to truly have that hands-on experience that we were hoping to see, and hoping that they would, come out of that implementation saying, this was great, we feel enabled, we feel educated. And so that was one of the segments that we started with. And I think from there, with step 3, you'll see define CSM engagement by segment. We were able to, based upon that LTV that I was talking about, take a look at that customer experience, take a look at their size, their growth trajectory. And I've actually been building out what the engagement model looks like for a medium-sized customer, or what that engagement looks like for a large or an extra large customer. And at Mitek, the customers that require high touch, that is our most important segment right now. And those customers that, have a lower segment or lower, significance, we're going to be a little more reactive. One thing that we found with looking through our data is successful in production. Once that takes place, that engagement model, we can kind of step back. We've seen that customers, once they're onboarded, they get successful, we can actually start taking a more reactive approach, autopilot, and we can continue to still retain and even grow because they had that great onboarding experience. They just want us to leave them alone, and then we can react or come back at the end of the year, a couple times a year, and talk through new objectives with our customers. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into the benefits of all that, how we reached it. But those are, step 1 through 3, kind of looking at the data, segmenting, and then creating the appropriate engagement model. And then Mike, from your perspective, number 4, I think, is a staffing model that you've been working on long before I think I joined Mitek, and have been iterating off of it. So do you want to walk us through?
Yeah, I can cover that one. And in addition to understanding the customer's appropriate experience, it's important to look at your CSMs and look at the strengths that they have, right? I'm a big believer in focusing on CSM strengths and developing those, and not necessarily working on their weaknesses. That might be a bit controversial, but that's how we built the team. And then what we found is that there are some CSMs that are really strong project managers and that they should be in the onboarding phase. And so that's how we map them. So that's how we kind of got to that I guess staffing of the onboarding team versus the after onboarding CSMs. But the 5-year CSM staffing model, if you look at the journey of a customer success org, year one, super excited, let's invest, let's get a lot of CSMs, let's spend the money. Year two, you're starting to see results, great. Year three, this customer success org is really expensive. How can we get more efficient? Year four, that I don't want to get to the point where they're like, okay, now we got to start thinking about, are we doing this the right way, right? So the staffing model helps with that. And what our CEO or my CEO, our CEO really, that came to us and said, hey, I'm not going to keep hiring CSMs that cover X number of customers and that goes on forever. I need to see a model where you get more efficient. I need to see a model where perhaps CSMs cover more customers, more revenue. There's efficiency gains built into the model, right? And so that really all starts with segmentation. How are we going to segment? What is the engagement model? And then you can get into the staffing model. And what the staffing model does, and it's really an opportunity to leverage the segmentation and the engagement model work that you've done. But the staffing model gives you headcount justification to some degree, right? This is what we plan on doing the next 5 years. Now, you don't have to stick to it, but it is a plan that we always come back to when I ask for new headcount, bring up the staffing model. Where are we with that? How's it going, right? We said we'll have 3 next year. Are we on target for that? Hiring 3 CSMs. How's the efficiency going, right? So I see it as a way to ensure that we will have the resources we need, at least from a CSM hiring standpoint, in order to accomplish everything that we want to do. And that really starts with segmentation. So that's why I tie it back to that.
And Mike, you've been having nurtured, is kind of how I think of it, conversations with our executive team, I think year over year in preparation for this. This is not just like a one-time ask with a ton of data. This is kind of an ongoing update, it feels like, from our end to our executive team so that they're constantly up to speed with
absolutely
how we're doing.
Yeah, and I must say, webinars are super valuable when the speakers are honest and transparent and, explain the reasons why they messed up. So this is an area where this is a new thing for me. I did not have a staffing model when I started, but I could see where we're going. I've done this enough times where I know year 3 and year 4 are really challenging. And so I was lucky enough to partner with someone from finance that knew how to do the staffing model. So I guess my comments are that do this before I did, and also partner with the right people. Don't do this by yourself. So if you have any questions about that, we could do a whole webinar on staffing and how to make sure that you're getting the headcount that you think you need. I think that's an entire webinar. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah. And I think I should add to that as well, the data that we collected, how we landed on that, the way that Mitek, we've segmented our customers, that's what we have right now. That could change. But I also realized that us telling you what we landed on, that could also be an entire webinar too, where we could dive into how we reached those segmentations and how we decided that. So these are kind of more just high level steps that could be part of the consideration. So yeah, there's a lot here, but it's a very exciting topic and something that we're constantly tweaking and would really be interested in what others are doing as well. All right, so Mike, you want to talk about the old way of segmenting customers?
Yeah, sure. So really the old way is very basic, right? And this is what I did when I started at Mitek. It was ARR, right? Number 3 there. What's the ARR? Let's split it up by that. Let's not take into account anything else. Let's just look at the ARR. So that's one way to do it. It certainly is too basic. The other that's popular is by vertical, right? So you get banks, you get marketplaces, you get gaming, and you're off and running. Size of the customer doesn't matter. Now, there are good reasons to do it that way. You can become an expert in that vertical. I think the downside, though, is you have to take a look and see if there's any value in having your CSMs switch industries, but the use case be the same, and then they can draw from other industries. One example is we have marketplace customers like Airbnb. We have banks as well. They operate very differently, but I would draw from my marketplace experience and bring that over into the banking discussions, right? And vice versa. And I get to see how they're both attacking identity verification. So I do see a lot of value in that. And then region, that's popular as well. Super basic there. I think it's less of a concern now that we're very virtual, the way we operate in business. And then the fourth one is customer employee size or customer annual revenue and splitting up that way. We did that at Oracle. And I think that is very basic. I think the problem with all four of these is it's really internal looking, right? It has nothing to do with what the customer's trying to accomplish. This is very internal looking. And I think if you're a customer centric company, this is not the way you do it. You can use parts of these and layer on other things that we'll get into, but a popular landing spot is here. I did this as well, and we'll take you through our history and where we landed.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I would actually add to that, Mike, you mentioned something that was interesting, and I've just recently kind of stepped out of the IC role, and previous companies that I've worked for, it's always been split up by region, but more so around ARR. And I've always, kind of worked with smaller accounts. And I think this internal look that the more junior CSMs or the younger CSMs should be working with the smaller customers, and the more seasoned and senior CSMs will be working with these large customers. And I think that's great. I think that's, probably in some ways very foolproof, but we, tried a couple of things here at Mitek where we put our junior CSM on the largest account, and she actually ended up doing awesome. And I think that she's a senior now. And so I think when you look at these four different things, I think it can actually limit your CSM's growth as well, and the ability to kind of be cross-functional and switch things up if you're kind of sticking to those old stodgy ways of segmenting your customers. So to Mike's point, those are the old way of segmenting, and I do like the vertical piece, so I will hang on to that. What we found at Mitek is kind of a recipe, and we're now calling that advanced segmentation, because we are considering all factors like ARR, the vertical, the way that our customers are staffing internally. But to Mike's earlier point is, I think we like the idea of segmenting our customers based upon use case. And for that, we found that our CSMs, when they work in a specific use case, not entirely, like we don't want all of our CSMs working, or one CSM working in marketplace and then another only working with banks, because then you kind of lose your edge, I think, as a CSM, and not working with a bunch of different verticals or use cases. But what we found is in the fraud and identity space, if our customers have a specific use case and one of our CSMs has seen that particular use case over and over again, that CSM is basically an expert now, and they know the use case. The bonus is that they can be a subject matter expert internally. And I've actually experienced this myself, where I've actually had people come to me and say, hey, I need to learn about this, this, and this. Can you help me? And it actually gives the CSM this enablement and this empowering feeling that it's like, wow, I'm actually a consultant. I am an SME. I've got both my customer and internal folks coming to me asking me for help on things, and it's not only a benefit to the customer because they get this SME, but it's also a benefit to your CSM. And I think that will actually help with CSM retention at some point. And so you factor that into the size of this customer. What is their lifetime value? What does that 3-year trajectory look like? We're focused definitely on the long term at Mitek, not necessarily short term and what they're paying us right this minute. And then you couple that with what does that appropriate engagement model look like? We, as Mike and I have both said, having that onboarding program was huge to segment that out and give customers an appropriate experience there. But we also have really been honing in on that white glove experience that I was talking about early on. And then slowly with some of our smaller, less high touch customers becoming a little more reactive. I don't really like that word, but it's really kind of just backing off and letting our customers come to us and say, hey, we're ready to start this project. We're ready to engage. We need your help with this because we already partnered with them. We had that white glove experience. We're checking in with them, occasionally to see how things are going. That really does protect the CSM as well. It keeps them from being over-servicing their customers, overused, maybe underutilized in other areas because they're not doing a bunch of spin up work and so forth. And so you guys, for everyone that's joining, this is our next phase of the customer maturity index. And so that's kind of what we wanted to leave you here with today is this is kind of our advanced, sophisticated way of looking at how we want to segment those customers out. Mike, I don't know, do you want to add anything to this?
I'll add something. So I think you said overservicing, which is, we talk about it all the time, you and I. We know, as CSMs, we know what it takes to keep a customer. We don't always know what it takes to lose a customer. And I know that that's somewhat controversial or sounds weird, but this year I do want to figure out what does it take to lose a customer, because I want to operate right in that area, right? And I think that's where efficiencies are gained. When we looked at some customers, we're like, man, we haven't met with them in 6 months and they're growing, right? Yeah. So then we thought about, well, what's the customer's experience? That individual that manages the relationship with us has 20 vendors. And if everyone wants to do a business review, that's 80 business reviews a year. That's a pain, right? And so we're going to do all this work for a business review, show up, and they don't need it. They're not asking for it. They're growing. And so, that's where we kind of realized that perhaps we don't need to keep doing these business reviews and push for them. We don't need to send them the reporting and the cadence that we're doing. And they've continued to grow and we've backed off. And so it's really worked well. The point of the customer maturity index is really just to show that, two things. One, you should not just set your segmentation and forget it. We revisit it every year. Not that we're never happy with it, but we're always thinking about what's next, right? So customer maturity is an interesting one, right? So we work with a lot of customers that are great and they're on top of it. They're very talented. They're very responsive. We have others where, and I'm sure this is something that's shared with the attendees today, that, I don't see the path for success with them the way they're currently set. Maybe it's not a priority, things like that. And we're spending a lot of time trying to convince them that they need to use us, right? So once you can segment it like that, I think it really helps you understand what are proper expectations in this relationship, just like any relationship with someone or some company. And then you can resource appropriately, right?
Mm-hmm. And that actually leads us to kind of just a summary, I think, of where we were in 2017. And Mike, maybe you should actually go through the history since you have more of it than I do.
I'll go through the history. And like I said before, being transparent and honest about where you messed up is super important for just anything, especially webinars. And I also built this slide so I could see that it's all messed up as far as the build, but we'll power through it. So, or maybe it's perfect.
No, we're good. I have like little animations that are coming.
Okay, cool. 2017, so no customer segmentation. I came in, I actually couldn't even get a customer list in my defense. It took me a while to get one of those. And then 2018, I got a customer list, and then we had ARR, right? So we just did it by ARR. And then 2019, we realized that current revenue doesn't really matter. And if we can get to lifetime value, that's even better. And it also gives us time to work, right? So if we're setting the expectation, hey, this customer is going to be an extra large in 3 years, that gives us a 3-year runway to work with the customer instead of hearing comments that, why isn't this customer growing so fast, right? Well, we said it's 3 years, right? 3 years, they'll be in Excel, and we have a plan for that. 2020, we created the customer onboarding program, and this is really coming from our customers, their feedback, right? So you have to take a look at your product, and you have to see how much is domain experience or expertise needed from the vendor, us. How versed is the customer in identity verification? We found that they're not. And so we need a whole training, education program, expectation setting. And so that's where the onboarding program was birthed from. Then 2021, LTV with evolved engagement models, small, medium, large, extra large. And then what we realized is, and we realized this a while ago, Rachel, is that CSMs, they're great. CSMs just want to help. And they don't care if you're a medium, large, and extra large. You need help, I'm going to help you. So in a way, you have to protect CSMs against themselves. And one way to do that is group all the mediums with one CSM. Then they're providing the same level of engagement for all the mediums. When you have a medium, large, and extra large customer, you treat them all like XLs, like Rachel mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And mediums are the most needy too. So you put one CSM on a group of mediums, they're definitely going to be incredibly busy and servicing a lot. And so that's kind of, again, where this engagement model was birthed is we're going to be giving one CSM a bunch of medium accounts. What is the most effective way that this CSM can be engaging with these mediums? Because if they're sending monthly reports, doing quarterly business reviews for 20 mediums, that ends up being a lot, or more than 20 accounts potentially. So all of that being said, thanks, Mike, for going through the history. The findings is what I wanted to go into next, because that is where a lot of the data that I was talking about earlier has been compiled from. Is we knew, based upon the historical CSM metrics of making sure you're doing that quarterly business review, making sure you're doing all of these things that we're supposed to be doing as CSMs. We kind of identified what are those wrong metrics and what should the right metrics be. So we've kind of identified what those were and how we're going to make those changes. Like I said, over-servicing medium customers, how do we kind of protect the CSM's time so that whatever time is used is the most efficient and their skill set is really shining through. Saying the same thing. CSMs with mediums, large and extra larges, we don't want to treat them all the same, hence why we created this engagement model. And then of course, what Mike walked us through is that 5-year CSM staffing model. So again, this is kind of something that we started this year, the engagement model, defining what that over-servicing looks like, taking a look at the cadences that we had, maybe the different escalations. I personally have been challenged with pushing back on customers and telling them that we can't do what they want because it's not actually within our best interest as business partners to do it. I'm encouraging my CSMs to do the same, actually pushing back. And you know what, it's actually really encouraging, because I think the CSMs feel empowered to push back and not necessarily say no, but understand better why and where requests are coming from. So that's part of the engagement model too that we've been rolling out. And then executive engagement. There's always going to be escalations. There's always going to be conversations that need to happen at a higher level. So we've been kind of creating maps on how we can get our customers to a point where we have that executive alignment with our executives and also their executives. And then, the expected outcomes, I already see our customers as being consultants, our CSMs being consultants with our customers, and we're seeing the ROI, we're seeing the CSM time given back. We are in the process of scaling and getting those efficiency gains. And we also have a great NPS program that Mike rolled out a while ago, and we're constantly iterating off of that. So we're going to continue to see improvement there. And then CSM retention. I don't know if this is luck, but it might just be all of the things that we're trying to do as an org to empower our CSMs and get them engaged properly with customers. But we've had 100% retention with our CSM team at Mitek since Mike started, and we are trying to keep
not
it
luck,
that way.
Rachel.
What?
It's not luck.
It throws everything I just said out the window, so it's not. We do have a great team though, but I think doing things like this and constantly going back and tweaking, I think that's the key, is trying to figure out what's working, what's not. And, how do we want to readjust things like an engagement model or segments? How do we do that?
And they're part of the solutions, right? So it's not top down. I hardly come up with anything really, in full disclosure. So the solutions are coming from those that have to execute the programs, right? So they're developing the programs. I think that's super important.
Yeah. I think maybe I mentioned that earlier, but I think when you are coming up with these different segmentation possibilities, it's so vital to include the CSMs in that process as you're trying to figure out not only engagement, but how you want to segment your customers, because the further you move away from an individual contributor into management, I can say this myself, is the further removed you feel from the customer. And I think that can be a disadvantage as a manager or as a VP or director or whatever. You want to include your CSMs, because not only are you going to get the truth and you're going to really make a difference, but you're also going to empower your CSMs to feel part of the process. So if we haven't said it enough, I figured why not just say one more time why we should segment customers. And I really want to hone in more specifically on the 3 outcomes that we're seeing and that we think that those that do the segmentation exercise will see as well. So again, we were really looking to scale and get efficiency gains. From that, we're seeing that we can up our revenue and our accounts per CSM, because you'll see on the right-hand side, we're getting targeted, more tailored engagements. Our CSMs are getting increased bandwidth because they are focusing on the right metrics and not the wrong metrics with their customers. They're not, as you can see off to the right again, the customer experience, they're not confusing activity with achievement, and they're actually targeting their engagements with their customers so that when they do meet, it's important and it's targeted, and there's outcomes from that meeting, or there's next steps, instead of just checking in and not really talking about much. So that customer experience is really going to change. And I think the customers will see it too. They'll feel it. They'll feel like that was a great meeting, even if it was only 20 minutes. So by getting those efficiency gains, we're improving the customer experience. And then of course, the natural progression is customer growth. Our products are going to be adopted because customers are interested. They're going to be giving us more revenue because of natural growth of transactions. You see that below, but they're also going to really be interested in continuing to partner with you as a vendor. And one thing that we do at Mitek that is incredibly helpful is we work with marketing, and we get a lot of interactions and pop-up events and different series that we do with our customers. We basically take our marketing team and turn it into a community with our customers. And from there, we can get sales references, case studies, just active participation, which is what you want with your customers. So we see that as growth because we're growing our community and that long-term partnership. And of course, at the end of the day, we get to hopefully retain our CSM team. And we hope that for the folks here too that want to start the segmentation, is that your CSMs will want to stick around. If they're part of the process, they get to see the efficiency gains and help improve that customer experience. That's again, it's just a bonus that we see. Mike, you want to add anything here?
No, well said.
I was getting excited talking about it. So that is the why. Again, if there was any question before, one last thing we did want to do is just go back and revisit the takeaways so that everyone here can understand really, why we presented this. So again, abandon your old ways of segmenting customers. They no longer work in today's environment. Since COVID, our customer expectations are different and they're at an all-time high for various reasons. You really want to replace those old segments with advanced customer segmentation, like we talked about, and it is foundational for your CS org. The proper advanced customer segmentation really is the driver of efficiency gains. No matter what you choose, it's really going to help drive that efficiency and help you scale better. It's naturally going to improve the customer experience if you're aware of the issues that are driving that segmentation project. And ultimately, it's going to help your customers grow. Lastly, that 5-year CSM staffing model, it really is a valuable tool and something, like Mike said, you guys should start early if you can, and that will help you just kind of stay in line with what types of segmentation you need to do, and also keep you in line with your executive teams. So I hope that this was informative. Mike, do you want to add anything?
No, I think there are a lot of questions and chatter. I was answering some. Christy, I don't know where you want to go with the Q&A, but we'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, first I will say I took copious notes. And so even though I know that we all get access to the deck, I was busy writing away. I love it. I will say, you know, in my experience, and I'd love to hear Rachel and Mike, your thoughts on this, but when we think about segmentation, I do like to say and use like my tagline a little bit, but like, it depends, right? Every organization is at a different stage and requires a different type of segmentation, right? And it might not make sense if you are a platform that targets a specific industry and you only service one use case to think about using that as the initial way of segmenting out your customers. So I think about your business needs first and foremost, and just remember that not every organization will look the same, nor will it make sense for your customers given their experience and journey.
Yeah, I think that's why, well, I know that's why we presented it more as a playbook. And
Yep.
like, these are the questions to ask. This is the playbook process, right? And then this is where we landed. Where we landed doesn't always make sense for other companies.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, listen, let's start with some questions that we've got here in the Q&A section. And then I know that there was a bunch of stuff happening in the chat, which is amazing and what we'd like to see. But first, so Matt Freeman had a question. Said, I might be missing something with this advanced segmentation model, but it feels like it falls short in the event of a customer doesn't do a good job of sharing their objectives at the onset of the relationship. So he's got a 2-part question. 1, how do you mitigate this from happening? And 2, and what does your team do when a customer has prolonged onboarding due to lack of objective alignment or inactivity on the customer's side in the first few months of the partnership?
I feel like Matt works at Mitek and he's involved in all the internal meetings. So let me try and answer that. So the not sharing objectives. I mean, I would love if they had objectives and didn't share them. We're almost at a point a lot of times where they don't even know what their objectives are rather, and they know they have to have this for compliance reasons or other reasons, or their boss, you know, signed the contract with Mitek and now they have to implement it. And they're like, who's Mitek, right? What are we trying to accomplish? So it's a problem. And that's part of the reason we have the onboarding program, is really to tackle that early on and help them, right? These are the objectives that other customers are after. How about this? How about, and you work with them closely. And then your second question, or 1B, that's a sneaky way to get 2 questions in one. I like that. So the question about inactivity, I mean, that is tough. If a customer doesn't want to implement or use your product, what do you do, right? So we have a playbook for that, where we escalate to our salesperson who stays involved, and they have executive alignment. Theoretically, right? Ideally, this happens, and then they can hit up their connection and say, "Hey, you guys aren't implementing. I'm concerned. Something changed, right?" And so the CSM doesn't have to have that conversation; can escalate it to sales, and sales has that conversation. It doesn't work all the time.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, to add on to that, you know, let's say you've exhausted all options, right? We've escalated back to sales, the project stalls, it continues to stay in the onboarding program. I think for us, that is part of why we started the segmentation as well, or maybe not the segmentation, but the outcome of what the engagement model is going to look like. Because if we are not getting the customer to participate upfront and giving us those objectives, it's easier for us in a way to set expectations of what they're going to receive from Mitek and just as a business partner with us, if we can't get them to kind of play ball with us in the beginning. And so we have, to Mike's point, different playbooks on how we would handle that. But from a CSM perspective, we're aware of all of that during the onboarding phase and during handoff, so that we can continue to push our customers to partner with us and share that information. Otherwise, they're going to get maybe an abridged engagement model in a way. So.
Very good. Thank you. Let's go to the next question here. So this one was anonymous. I feel that reactive approach may work with a need to have product as compared to a nice to have product. Can you speak to your opinions on that?
I can't. Rachel, do you want to go first?
I was
can
trying to read it actually. Go ahead, Mike.
I think that's true. You know, a need to have, but there's some arguments where, you know, our product is not a need to have in a lot of cases, right? Marketplaces have no regulation. They don't need to use us. And they can use other products that maybe are perceived as less friction. Because maybe the marketplace, like an Airbnb, they want to say that they want to verify identities, but they also want to grow, right? And so there might be other products out there that are more important. So reactive, I think, can work in either case, but you have to have the data to show that it can, right? So maybe you do some testing, and testing on customers. I mean, maybe it's controversial, but I like to do it. And we do it all the time, right, Rachel? It's like, can we get away with this? Can we get away with that? Get away is probably the wrong word, but it kind of emphasizes what we're thinking about. It's like, oh, that actually worked. Maybe we could scale that. Maybe we could try it again, right? So being reactive, it's not like we make a decision from now on, we're reactive with every customer, right? It's like, let's be reactive with this
Based
customer.
on the data.
Yeah, and let's see what happens, right? So Rachel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it goes once again, maybe back to the onboarding program as well, is identifying the need and how much of a need is it, and their success criteria. We oftentimes, I mean, I've seen this a lot, and I think this also kind of plays into an autopilot mode, is a lot of times our customers have this quick need to get something implemented. And then once it's implemented, some, especially bigger organizations, they move on to the next project. And if we're sitting there waiting for them to engage with us, that can actually weigh on the CSM of like, oh, should I be doing more? You know, a lot of times we can't control the projects that our customers are working on that may not include us at all. And so by establishing that kind of objective up front or cadence, you know, after onboarding with our customers, knowing that there may be some times where they don't need to check in because they're working on other projects, and we can kind of coast and autopilot until they're ready to come back to us and implement this new use case. But having that onboarding program is going to ensure that they get up and actually live with our products.
There's another piece to it as well, where we do a really good job of communicating out status to everyone at Mitek that wants to know, right? So it's not like a surprise that this customer is stalling. That's the worst thing, is when your CEO figures out, because you haven't told him, that this customer is stalling or stalled. And, you know, so every week we have a customer success meeting, and we have 60 plus attendees, including the C-suite that join, and we communicate out status of things that are important, right? And have really good discussions. So that's another part of it that's really important.
Awesome. Great, guys. We've got 2 minutes left. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more question. All right. So I did not, another anonymous one. Is the onboarding program is that after implementation? So from another team or resource, or is your onboarding and the implementation process all owned by the CSM team?
Yeah, good question. So when I started, CSMs were engaged or introduced after go live. What a nightmare. So we brought that in, and we are engaged. The onboarding team is engaged at signing and sometimes prior to signing. And it's become one of the things, one of the programs that we discuss in pre-sales, because it's a differentiator, right? We have a program to onboard you, get you successful, in addition, implement you as well. So the way we view it is implementation is a part of onboarding. Onboarding is bigger than implementation, but implementation is obviously very important. Mm-hmm. Does that answer the question? I just started talking and I lost track if I'm...
Yeah, it does. It is owned, it is under the CS org. I think to answer the last part of that, Mike is our global owner of CS. So all of that rolls up into his realm. And again, yeah, that is in the beginning. Onboarding is like kickoff, and then implementation starts, and then they continue to stay in onboarding until they hit successful in production. That may not have been clear earlier. And that's when the handoff to CSM, which is my team, takes on that.
Yeah, going live is not enough, right? They got to be.
Yeah, they have to be successful in production.
All right, excellent. Well, listen, we are at time, so we're going to stop with the Q&A, but Mike did drop both LinkedIn profiles into the chat. So if you want to connect with Rachel and Mike, please go ahead, add them on LinkedIn, continue the conversation. We love to see that go on. Post any findings or learnings back into the community. We want to make sure that we're sharing early and often. Mike and Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us so much of your time and your knowledge. This was super insightful. I'm sure we could have gone on for another hour easily. I know that I have tons of follow-up questions, which I'll take those offline, but really just grateful to have you both here with us. Grateful during the week of Thanksgiving. So I'm going to give you guys a little extra thanks for that too, because I know it's a holiday week and people are taking time off, but want to thank everyone for joining us today. This session, like I mentioned earlier, will be recorded. It will be housed on our website. We'll also be sending it out to anyone who registered. We will be here again next Tuesday. So post turkey, full bellies, we'll be back webinar for our last one of November, and then we'll get ready for our December series. But again, thank you all so much. Rachel, Mike, have a lovely holiday. And thanks again for joining.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Christy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.